What's up, y'all? What's up? Welcome to the Pugilistic Linguistic Show. I am your host, Michael Foster, the voice of reason in an increasingly unreasonable world, and I am back. Before I get started, like I say all the time, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Share this with the masses. Tell your friends, tell your Romans, tell your countrymen about this podcast. And just share it, interact with the podcast because that helps in the algorithm. It gets it out to more people. You don't have to physically announce it to everybody. I mean, I would appreciate if you did, but you don't have to be the person to share this out. You just interact with it. It gets into the algorithm and hopefully more people can discover it. Trying to blow up in 2026. So like, share, subscribe, hype, whatever else YouTube allows you to do to a video to get it into the algorithm. Comment, tell me I'm full of shit, whatever. I'm cool with that. So anybody that knows me knows that I love music. I am a music nerd. Um, I have an ear for things that people generally don't hear. Um, I'm just musically inclined. I like music. That's my thing. And I love old school music. As far as the decade, I'm a big 70s music fan. I love 70s music, funk, R&B, disco, all that. Love it. That's where my ear is trained. 80s is cool, but 70s is my thing. I think it was the time for experimentation, coming out of the 60s and the doo wop and all that. And the 70s just had a different sensibility that I've always loved. It also helped that I have a bunch of older cousins who were teenagers or older than me at that time. And, I listened to what they listened to. So consequently, I got into the Brothers Johnson and the Earth, Wind, and Fire, and that kind of era. But growing up in the '80s, I was a teenager in the '80s, and then in the '90s I came into age. As a 20-year-old in the '20s, I was in my '20s or whatever, and listening to '90s and beyond music while I was into it, I liked the music in the '90s and beyond. But as I go back now and listen to it, I realize some things. Listening to '90s music, 2000s music, and comparing it to where I came up musically in the '70s and '80s, I realized that black music in the '90s really started to lose what made it popular, or what made it a forceful genre. It became really soulless in the '90s. Now, again, when I was in the '90s and listening to it or whatever, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I didn't really do this retrospective in my head at the time. But now as I go back, I'm like, ugh. It's really, for the most part, really forgettable. Now, that's not saying all of it. Now, there was a slice, that neo soul vibe, the Erica Badu's and the Roots and that soul querying collective and Mint Condition was the only band back in the 90s. Aside from that, there was some really forgettable music. Like, go back and you tell me what song from the 90s, just general R&B, do you say that's classic? Don't worry, I'll wait. However, I can go back to the 70s and I can say this song was a classic, and that song was a classic, and that song was a classic, and this song is classic, and songs you're still listening to 50 years later. What 1990 song will be listened to in 2040 like, oh, that was classic? Not from a nostalgic point of view, because I might still listen to a few songs from a nostalgia, from it takes me back to a time type perspective, not from a this is a classic song perspective. 90s music and beyond. And again, it's not 100% of it. There is still a sliver, a part of 90s, 2000s, 10s, and 20s, and maybe beyond of music that will still hold on to the core principles of R&B music, black music, that will maintain a listenability forever. Okay, so I'm not talking about 100% of black music, but enough of it to where it's noticeable. Like, for example, and I'm just going to pick this one song because one of the songs I was just listening to relatively recently. I used to love this group, Jeanne. There was a song on their first album called Sending My Love. And it was a typical 90s song. It was a sampled beat with some chords and some singing. And in the moment, I liked the song. It was a typical 90s production. And as I listened to it recently, I'm like, this song is really boring because there's no variation. I believe it was Quincy Jones that said, and that man has forgotten more music than I'll ever know. But I believe it was him that he said, we were talking about creation and putting his music together back in the day. He said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, every 8 measures or so, you got to change it up. Add an instrument, remove an instrument, go to a break beat. Do something every 8 measures or so to keep the listener engaged. Because if you don't, they'll tune out. It gets boring. That song by Jeanne, it was boring because it's the same old beat droning on and on and on for the entirety of the 3.5 minutes or so. No variation, no change up. It was just what it was. And that was indicative of the music beginning in this hip hop era. Now, that being said, I'm removing hip hop from this equation because that has a different set of listening requirements. You know, it's the whole point of that is to be staccato and to be the lyrics. So hip hop music itself does not really fit this equation. Some songs do though. You know, that the Tribe Called Quest, the that jazz type of sound, they kept it interesting, but that was the exception, not the rule. So you go back and you listen to it, it's just it lost its soul. You know, it wasn't Al Green in the 70s. It wasn't Curtis Mayfield. It wasn't Isaac Hayes. There was no originality. It was sampled, repetitive, staccato beats, some keyboards, and some singing. Again, in the moment, I liked it. I didn't know any better. But as I go back and compare it and contrast it to the music that really attracts my ears, the 70s, ugh, it's really forgettable. Even songs like Kung Fu Fighting and You Sexy Thing back in the 70s had more originality, had more interesting things moving around in it than the most popular 90s song. It was just good. When did black music lose its soul? Well, I will venture a guess when record labels started mass producing black music with no regard for the art form. They were just making music. They would try to make a buck. And the artists themselves were just trying to make a buck. I can come out sounding like everybody else and make this money because that song is popular. I'm gonna make a song to sound like it so that can be popular. And that began the decline of black music. The desire to go mainstream. I have a hard time believing that What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, that album, was created with a mainstream focus in mind. I have a hard time believing that Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder was made with a mainstream focus in mind. But I definitely believe that a song like Get It On Tonight by Montel Jordan was made with a mainstream focus in mind. I definitely believe that. But the thing about it is, What's Going On in Songs in the Key of Life crossed over, not because the artist made a mainstream song or mainstream album. The mainstream came on to them. See, I'm a firm believer in if you make what's true to yourself and what's true to your art, the public will come around to you. As a quick aside, I call it the Snoop Dogg syndrome. Snoop Dogg has always been him. He still smoke his weed. He still do his thing. He still do his shizzle and all that, whatever. He's still Snoop Dogg. The mainstream came along to him, came around to him. That's why he's doing the Olympics now. He's doing mainstream stuff. Not because Snoop decided he wanted to change who he was. The mainstream changed who they were. It came around to him. And he never lost who he was. Stevie never lost who he was. And Marvin never lost who he was. They did what they did. And, mainstream be damned. And the mainstream came around to them. And it maintained the integrity of their art. Black music sold its soul to rise up the charts. And that's why black music is in the state that it's in these days, or the state that it's in today. Do you realize the best black music ain't made by black people nowadays? Now, I'll be frank with you. I don't keep up with anything made in 2024, 2025. I just don't. It doesn't tickle my ear anymore. But for a long time there, Adele and Sam Smith was making black music. Now, I'm not a Sam Smith fan. I'll tell you that off the top. But I won't deny the type of music that he made. I'm a big Adele fan, so that's not going to change. But you realize they were making black music better than black folk when they were at the top of the height of their powers. Stephanie Mills, who was one of the preeminent R&B singers of her generation, Stephanie Mills said something on some talk show, not recently, but 10 years ago, whatever. She said that America wants black music, but they don't want black people making it. Let me say that again. America wants black music. They just don't want black people making it. And I believe that. And I think that black artists are complicit in that because they basically have relinquished the genre. They don't make the music of their ancestors. This is what kills me about the whole shit. The way this is supposed to work, older artists make their music during their time, and then later generations of artists are supposed to build off of that and make their own. And then later generations build off that, and so on and so forth. The Platters begat the Temptations. The Temptations begat Earth, Wind, and Fire, let's say. It was this group builds off of the work of a previous group or artist or whatever, and it's supposed to be a building type thing. Well, these artists now behave as if nobody came before them, meaning they're not building off of the foundations of previous generations. And that's a problem because the music suffers, the genre suffers. America wants black music, they just don't want it from black people. And black people are complicit in that. But it all boils down to this. We as the consuming public are to blame because we don't demand better. At the end of the day, an artist wants to make music that is embraced by the listening public. They will make what sells, whether you like it or not. That's the truth. Nobody sets out to make their life's work to make music that nobody's going to buy. That's just not how this works. We, as the listening public, buy bullshit. We support bullshit. So guess what they gonna make? More bullshit. Take hip hop. Now we'll bring hip hop into this part of the equation. Do you think the Lil Yachty's of the world and the who are the trash rappers out there? I can't even think of any right now just because I don't listen to them. But Lil Yachty was the one, he got under my skin. But do you think the mumble rappers of the world will continue to make this mumble rap if nobody bought it? If the listening public said, no, we want more Rakim level lyrics. No, we want more Big Daddy Kane type sounds. No, we're going to hold you accountable and we're going to hold you to a higher standard. Make better music. If the listening public said that, do you think these mumble rappers will make mumble rap? No, they step their games up. Ultimately, it's our fault as the listening public. While the shit that passes for R&B today passes for R&B, we keep supporting it. If we didn't support it, they wouldn't make it. So on some level, the decline of black music is our fault. But it's also, I think, a concerted effort by the big three music labels to put out crap. Do you realize there are only 3 true conglomerate record labels out there? Sony, Warner, and Universal. And within them, or under their umbrellas, there are hundreds of record labels. But there are really only 3. We're not talking about the true independent ones. But there are really only 3. And they regulate what's being fed to the masses. They have diluted black music to the point to where there's nothing of substance being released. Universal Music Group owns Motown. I think I read somewhere that this is the first time in Motown's history, which goes back 60-some years, that they have no Detroit artists on their roster. None. Because they are under this big umbrella, and Motown Records no longer has the finger on the pulse of Black America. It's just a faceless label under this huge conglomerate. Like, as a quick aside, that's like BET and Viacom. BET ain't been black in years. BET basically was Black MTV because they were under this umbrella and it lost what made it special. Motown is under Universal Music and it lost what made them special. Do you honestly think a Universal Music Group will release an album like What's Going On if Marvin Gaye released it today? No. It's not commercially viable in their eyes. Hell, Motown under Berry Gordy back in the 70s fought What's Going On, thinking it wasn't commercially viable, but Marvin fought it and got it released, and the rest is history. Do you really think Universal Music Group is going to release a What's Going On? Do you think a Universal Music Group will release a double album, Songs in the Key of Life? It's not musically viable in that conglomerate's eyes. The art be damned. And that's what's wrong. Black artists have no soul. Because they have to be beholden to the folk that sign their checks. Like Common said, shame I gotta depend on white labels to keep my life stable. It's the truth. Ain't no Motowns no more. Ain't no Hot Waxes by Norman Whitfield no more. You know, ain't no Solar Records by Dick Griffey and Don Cornelius anymore. Ain't no more of the T-Nex with the Isley Brothers. Ain't no more of those. Even the black imprints, the labels run by a Lil Wayne, let's say, or any other artists that have their own imprints, they still are beholden to the record labels that put them on. And they can only do so much. Black music has no soul. There was this movie back in the 80s, Amazon Women on the Moon. Yeah, I'm all over the place today. And David Alan Grier played a character. Amazon Women on the Moon was one of them parody type movies where like you were watching a TV channel back in the middle of the night and they had these random ass shows on. Well, it was one of them type of movies that kind of parodied those things. And they had David Alan Grier on there, like a commercial interlude in the middle of the movie. And he played a character called Don No Soul Simmons. And he was a singer, black singer, who sang songs but had no soul. Don No Soul Simmons. Look it up. Amazon Women on the Moon. And this is exactly where black music is today. No soul. It's sad because, again, I grew up with artists who gave a damn about their art. Intervisions and Key of Life and Hotter Than July and Original Musicarium and What's Going On and I Want You and, Rags to Rufus and all these classic albums made by black artists who cared about their art. To come from that to where we are today. And yeah, I know I sound like one of those get off my lawn type dudes, and maybe that's where I am. But am I lying? Good music is good music. I don't care when it was made. My daughter, who's 14, likes Earth, Wind, and Fire. Why? because I like Earth, Wind, and Fire, and that's what I play around her. Just the way it is. Good music is universal. Unfortunately, we don't make good music anymore. The best black music ain't made by black people. And that's a problem. We need to get back to loving our art again. We need to get back to putting our souls back into music. It was called soul music forever. Why? Because it had soul. You notice it ain't called soul music no more. I'm just saying. Anyway, I'm going to climb down off my soapbox today. Again, like I say, like, share, subscribe, and put in the comments your favorite album, your favorite song from back in the day, or even maybe even current day. If you have something that harkens back to those soul music 70s or soul music 80s, I'd love to hear it. But in the meantime, in between time, let me say to you all, I will see you all next week. I appreciate your ear. Like, share, subscribe, hype. Give me an algorithm. Until we meet again, allow me to say peace.